All right. So basically, this is our simple format. We'll go through a couple of announcements on just the things that we're going to talk about tonight. We do mystery birds, which will be handled by Kathy Wrigley. Then we go through some bird migration with the new arrivals and departures. And myself and Susan will talk a little bit about those. And then Deb is actually going to talk us through the program for this evening, which is Plants for Birds, the Caterpillar Connection. And she knows her stuff, and as far as native plants and everything else. So I'm looking forward to it because I'm in the middle of this pandemic. It's no time like the present to plant good plants in your yards and attract more birds. So you can go to the next one. Next week, on September 10th, we'll have another one at 7 p.m. for the next bird chat. The program that evening will be Bird Photography Tips by Jack Horton. And he's a great photographer, and he'll give you some tips. And we talk about, I do photography as well, and we always give each other tons of information and tons of guff about our photos. So. But he's a great photographer, and that should be super interesting. And also this weekend on Saturday, we have a bird survey at Oakland Nature Preserve, which Kathy runs it, and her email is there on the screen. But if you shoot her an email, we usually meet, 7 o'clock, Kathy, 7:30?
7.
Oakland Nature Preserve, out towards Winter Garden. And it's a really cool park as well, and Kathy's done a lot of stuff there, knows her stuff out there for sure. But it's usually a good group of people, and we just bird and try to see how many we can see, and everybody's on the same team, so it's good. It's good fun. So on the 17th, we will not have bird chat, but we will do a monthly program that Orange Audubon puts on. It's Cultivating the Wild, which is Bartram's travels, and Robert Wilson, who's a good friend of all of ours and a really good digiscoper as far as photographer. He works with Coascopes, but he'll be leading that. And the good thing with that one, you don't have to register for anything. You can go straight to YouTube and put in Orange Audubon Society, subscribe to it anyway. You can go and watch all of these old bird chats plus other programs. But that one will be for September 17th. And it's interesting, William Bartram, it's basically based on a book by him from the late 1700s of his travels through the South. And the interesting thing, if you want to see this, you can Google Bartram's travels, and when you see the actual title of this book come up, it's about a paragraph long, and I mean, it's insane. And it's this super long, very descriptive title. I haven't read the book. I'm looking forward to the program. I think I'm going to try to read the book before then. But it should be pretty interesting because it's his travels through the South, especially into Florida, and dealing with American Indians as well, plus all of the nature stuff and collecting seeds and feathers and everything else from what I can find out about it. But it should be good. So check that out. Deb and the Orange Audubon Society, they've just finished up, and it's actually at the printers, the new brochure for 2020 and 2021. Obviously, go to orangeaudubonfl.org to sign up for Orange Audubon and join. And then with that, you'll be sent this pamphlet. Plus, we try to put them in places at some of the wildlife management areas, including Lake Apopka, just so that it kind of gives everybody a little window into what Orange Audubon does, which they've been doing great things for a long time. And I'm new to it in the last few years, but it's a really cool thing to check out. And speaking of Lake Apopka, we started, Deb and the Orange Audubon Society started this Lake Apopka Wildlife Drive Ambassador Program. And basically, there's a pair of us each day, actually 2 pair because we do 2 shifts, but basically a welcome committee, just explaining, what you're going to see on the drive, where the restrooms are, the rules and regulations a little bit, telling you how long it is. And it's just more of a welcome and saying hello. And it's amazing with COVID and with all of the restrictions now, how busy it is. I mean, I think Father's Day, they did 720 cars through the gate. And, you know, it's still very enjoyable. It's very hot right now, but we always tell everybody once you come in, you know, check back on, if you don't come back, a lot of us go, you know, every day that it's open, and sometimes when it's not, we ride our bikes in and that kind of thing. But we always encourage people to check it out as much as you can, because with the different seasons and the different birds that come in and everything else. So, but you can email volunteer@orangeaudubonfl.org to volunteer for it. We're always looking for more people, and it's a cool program, and it's a good thing to do. So, all right, Kathy, do you want to take it away?
Okay, so in this portion, we're encouraging you to participate. So if you're new to Zoom, there's a little tab at the bottom, or a little bar at the bottom where it says chat, and you can click on that and you can type in. So there's two very, 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 very similar looking birds here. They're different species. They are definitely related. So anyone care to guess? You can put L for left and R for right, what birds you're seeing there. Like I said, these make us crazy. And they're here right now, and they're really tricky. Anyone want to guess what they are? It's okay if you get it wrong, because goodness gracious, I know I've gotten them wrong many a time. So
water thrush. One is a water thrush, but I don't know which one.
Okay, they're both water thrushes.
Ah, oh my God.
Yeah, I can recognize your voice, Linda. So yes. There's two kinds of water thrushes. So one is one and one is the other. And the differences are very, very subtle. So any guesses?
No, I have no idea.
Anybody else?
One was, well, do we get Louisianas here?
Yes, so one of them's a Louisiana.
Okay.
It's not here very long at all. And then
but it's here now? Is it here now?
Yeah, it's here now.
So where were these pictures taken?
Sam can tell you, because Sam, where did you take your pictures?
I took the one on the left, I took at Fort DeSoto, and the one on the right I took last week at Mead Gardens.
Oh.
And I actually saw, I think it's that same bird yesterday at Mead Gardens. So it's still hanging out, but it is actually showing as rare on eBird.
Oh.
So, I see that Lori. Yeah, that's Lori, right? Your Mac user. Northern and Louisiana water thrush. Anyone want to take a guess at which one is the Louisiana, which one? That's a tough one. I mean, this is hard.
This is very hard.
Very hard. Oh, Gigi's in. Gigi, which
one? On the right,
the one on the right's Louisiana.
The one on the right is Louisiana?
Yes. Yes, good job. That's Gigi, right? All right, go ahead. You can advance the slide and we'll have the names there and we'll talk about it. Yep.
Cool.
So these are really cool birds.
Yeah.
And I'll give you just a little bit of information about them, because if you want to see Louisiana water thrush, you need to be looking like now, because they won't be here much longer. The northern water thrush stays here a little bit longer, but there's fewer of them. You know, there's some that kind of hang around for a while, but they're both kind of hard to see, and you often will hear them before you see them. So here's something interesting. In their breeding grounds and their winter grounds, the Louisiana prefers running water, and the northern prefers the flat water, the swamps, the bogs, which we have a lot of here. And if they're singing, now I did hear a northern singing. It was in late spring, and so I guess it was getting close to breeding time, and he hadn't left yet. And I heard him singing down at the end of the wildlife drive, which was cool. So how you tell the song if you're somewhere where they are going to be singing? The Louisiana sounds like a stream. It begins with a descending phrase, like it's water flowing down. Okay, I'm not making this. This all came from All About Birds, which is the Cornell website. And if you haven't checked it out, it's really, really interesting. And the northern, its introductory notes on its song are the same pitch, so like flat water. So that's a good way to remember. Another way to know the difference, the Louisiana has a little bit larger bill because it eats a little bit larger prey. The Louisiana also, they both have this eyebrow. Everyone can see that. And the Louisiana has a wider end of it. The stripe is wider at the end. But of course, now here's the thing. Usually you don't see them out like the one on the left. They're usually like way deep in the wood, and you can barely see a shape. And so you can't even see an eyebrow or anything. So it's tricky. And you can listen. So now I'm going to play it. So I'm going to go to Merlin here. There's all different ways to get, this is the fastest. And Merlin's also free. It's from Cornell. So the northern is like a sharper, and I'm playing the call because they're not singing right now. So this is northern. It's a really sharp call, and actually they're very territorial, and so they use that to chase away, anyone that's intruding on their territory. The Louisiana is lighter and it's faster. Oops, there's my dog. A little hard to hear. And here, that's faster. So I've heard those in the last 2 weeks over. I walk into the end of the wildlife drive when it's closed. You're allowed to do that. And I've heard them back in there, but I've heard the northern too. They're both in there. Some other interesting things. Let's see. They both move their tails. And actually where did I write that? The genus the water thrushes belong to, and I don't speak Latin, so it's Motacilla. It means tail wagger, but actually they don't wag their tail. They dip their entire rear, kind of like a, okay.
Spotted sandpiper?
Yes, just like a spotted sandpiper. And we don't know why, but they think it might be to startle the prey so they can catch it, but we don't really know why. Another way you can tell the northern from the Louisiana is the Louisiana has fewer streaks on its throat and its breast. Its legs are bright pink, but a northern water thrush can have pink legs too. So, and often you don't see their throat. And another thing is the northern tends to have more of a yellowish color on its breast, and the Louisiana is a bit more whiter. And let's see, the Louisiana breeds in the east, and it winters in the Caribbean and Central America, and the northern breeds in the far north, and it winters in Central America, but there's a few that winter in very South Florida. Okay, so we can go on to the next one. I think there's another picture, maybe not.
It's like I don't have trouble. There.
All right, so I took this picture. So which one is that? Someone chime in. I see some answers in the chat. Let's see what we got here. All right, so which one is this? Now that you've had your lesson, this is tough.
Well, this one has a yellower belly, so
Yes.
it's the northern.
Yes, it's a northern. It's yellower. It's got more streaking under its neck. It's hard to see the back of the eye stripe.
Yeah.
And see how its legs look really pink? So
Yeah.
it's because of the sunlight shining through them. So it's a tricky bird, but they're definitely worth looking for. You hear that sound, just start searching. And you'll be hearing them both call like for a little while, but the Louisianas leave sooner. So if you want to see one, get over there to Mead Gardens. Okay. All right. Next up.
And I guess it's back to me. I won't talk very long about these since they are leaving. I thought the interesting thing on these birds, the least bittern, they're very elusive, just like the water thrush that she explained. But when we get to the next slide, you don't have to go there yet, but when you see the migration, they should be here year round, and they are, but not near as prevalent as they were in the last 2 or 3 months. Like during the summer, we get tons of them. Actually, I was going back through my eBird list, and on July 18th, I had 21 birds just on the Lake Apopka Drive. So it's pretty interesting that every map I looked at, and I even asked Kathy last night, I'm like, it's saying that these birds stay here, but I know that they go, and basically we're right on the threshold line, and most of these birds move south and they winter in the very southern U.S., especially South Florida. but Mexico and Central America. And for us, it's May through August. And the interesting thing with this picture is these birds are in the heron family, but unlike most herons, like you see great blue heron, little blue heron, that kind of thing, they're not wading birds. Most of these birds hunt like this on the reeds. They'll bend the reeds over the water. And like Kathy said, with the tail bobbing on the water thrush, the bittern a lot of times will use its wings, just kind of flap a little bit to scare its prey up, especially in murkier water, and they can see them and they go after them. But they'll bend those reeds right over and almost create their own hunting platform, which is, to me, it's kind of cool to watch that kind of behavior. Again, these birds are tough to find, and I should have used a better picture where it was more camouflage and you can barely see an eye in there, because that's the way you usually see them. The one on the left here in these pictures is a male. They have a very dark, almost iridescent blue and black for their cap, as well as all the way down their back. The one on the right is actually a male as well, but that's a recently fledged bird, and I took that about a month ago out of Apopka, but you can still see he's got some of his young bird fuzzies going around the edge of him. I swear it's a clear picture. It's not a blurry picture. It's just his little fuzzy stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's a super interesting. And here's what I was talking about. If you look at Florida, we're right on that cusp, or actually a little bit in the year-round section, and we'll see them year-round. I went back and looked, and last year in 2019, the last one I saw was on Christmas Day. But then the first one I saw this year was on March 1st. And I didn't see another one for 2020 until April 25th. So, I went, a good month, almost 2 months without seeing one. And again, they're so tough to see, but I noticed over the last 2 months, more just the last month, they've been, and Deb or Kathy, do you know what is that floating stuff that we see like along Laughlin that's out on the left? Do we know what that plant is that covers everything? Is it hydrilla or?
Yeah, hydrilla's under there, yeah.
Okay, but when you're driving by and if you're not looking for them, they look like a stick, and that's the only time you really see them, that they're not in the cattails or in the reeds. They would be sitting out in the middle, and until I put bins on them and realized, oh, those last 6 or 7 sticks I saw were actually least bitterns. So anyway, it's an interesting bird. They're technically departing, but you should still be able to see 1 or 2 through the winter. But again, May through August is when we have them the most in Central Florida. So that's it. Susan?
All right, so one of our new arrivals are the blue-winged teals. So these are the first ducks to arrive, and coincidentally, they're also the last to leave. They really like it here, I think, in Florida. They pretty much stay with us. So when you're seeing the males, we call them a blue-winged teal, and if you see them sitting, you may not see the blue, because you can see it's up on the shoulder, and there's a little patch of green. And sometimes if you're just sitting and you see the patch of green, it's kind of a little bit misleading. The best way to identify them is that nice bright crescent. It could actually just be a lighter area behind the, just kind of a crescent, but maybe not as defined as during breeding time. The males, they have that nice dappling in the chest. They have a black head and beak. And that kind of helps you identify them too. Females have that, they're just kind of overall brown, and they have a darker cap and an eye line, and they have a black bill too that can help you with identifying them. They are pretty common, so they're not really a conservation concern, but we can go to the next slide. And now so we're real easy to tell those are blue-winged teals, but here they are, and you can see in the upper left photo, they're kind of next to an American coot, and you can see the relative size of them. They're kind of small, really. And they don't have, when they're not breeding, they don't have that distinct crescent, but they do have still that whiteness around the bill. It's kind of set off with that black bill. And of course, on the right, you get a prize if you can identify those birds as blue-winged teals, because all you see is, that's kind of what they normally look like half the time when you're trying to see what birds are. They are dabbling ducks, and they do eat everything. They're omnivores. They'll eat plants, they eat bugs. So I think that's kind of helps them to be a little bit more stable population. The oldest one that they found was actually 23 years and 3 months. The bird banders, you know how they band them? And it was I think that's a pretty good age for birds. So they get a lot of time. And then if the next one kind of shows the migration map, and you can see that we're the non-breeding grounds, so they aren't going to pass through. They're going to stay with us until they migrate back up to the breeding grounds. But these birds, like they're all the way up in Saskatchewan, I mean, all the way up to Alaska, and then they're coming down south. There is one small patch in Texas where they stay year-round. I guess those guys like it there, so they haven't left. But we're lucky in that we get to see them for quite a while. So that's very good. So we'll get to see more and more of those as our days go by, as our migration starts.
Okay.
Awesome.
All
And
right.
so now
Any
we're gonna
questions about the teals?
Oh, sorry. Deb, are you ready?
I'm ready.
You need a sip of water first.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Well, I'm going to turn it back over to Deborah Green. She's a former entomologist. She worked with caterpillars, knows her native plants, and this is, close to her heart for sure. And I've actually been over to her house to see a yellow-throated vireo. I was invited, but she has great landscaping and has been growing native plants for years, and she's going to tell you more about it.
Okay, thank you, Sam. And thanks everybody for coming. So plants for birds, the caterpillar connection is my topic. And you might be surprised at the way this is gonna lay out, that I won't get into the plants for a while. I'm talking more about the caterpillars and the birds. Fall and spring migration are exciting times of the year. And this is one of our bird walks at Mead Botanic Gardens. I think this was a spring one. And there are 37 species of warblers in the eastern United States, all of them passing through at some point or another, some regularly, some rarely, going north or south to the tropics. And these beautiful photos are by Frank Salmon, a member of ours who caught the bug for warblers going to Mead Gardens and taking pictures. He now wants to photograph all the warblers of the Western Hemisphere. And this is one that he photographed in Costa Rica. And I use it to explain that our migratory warblers are thought to be originally tropical because they spend 2/3 of the year in the tropics, only about 4 months up here. And by the way, most of them don't breed in Central Florida. They're just a couple that do. Most of them are breeding farther north in the eastern forest. And the other reason why we think that they were originally tropical is because there's a whole lot of species in the tropics. So this is the book. I love this book so much. It was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize in 2000. And I think that's the last time a bird book has been nominated for a Pulitzer Prize, a finalist for a Pulitzer Prize. It's a beautifully written book about migration. And you would really benefit from reading it. I've learned so much from it about the way they take off and migrate and how dangerous it is. They fly at night to avoid the hawks. And it's less turbulence at night. And then they come down and feed during the day. Many species winter in the Caribbean. And those don't have so far to go. But those that winter farther south in Central America or South America, they have a choice. Do they cross the desert in Mexico, or do they fly across the Gulf, 600 miles? And each species has worked that out and does it consistently one way or the other. And what's the reward for the risk of such a dangerous flight? It is the deciduous forests of the East leafing out and little caterpillars eating the new leaves. And these caterpillars were laid by the moths, the parent moths, that either overwintered as moths, the eggs overwintered, or the pupae overwintered. But anyway, as the new leaves come out, the little caterpillars come out. Caterpillars. Soft-bodied little caterpillars. And caterpillars have exoskeletons like all insects, but they're not hard like a beetle. So they're excellent for feeding nestlings. Perfect for feeding nestlings. And easy for a warbler to pick them out. The warbler is just designed to find these caterpillars in between the leaves. And they're soft and they're actually rich in carotenoids, which may be the source of some of the bright colors of the warblers. So songbirds are very aligned with the leafing out of the deciduous forest. And this is what I learned from Scott Weidensaul's book. And the conifers have new growth in caterpillars too, not just the deciduous plants. This is a pine warbler. So to review, warblers and other songbirds need caterpillars to feed their young. And as is in this picture shows, they also can use it in migration. This is the black and white warbler from Fort DeSoto that Sam took, and it's using that just as fuel for the migration. But unfortunately, the forests where those caterpillars are have decreased. They have decreased since the 1600s when these European settlers first came and started cutting them down. And it continues with development and continues with the burning of the Amazonian forest. So studies have shown that 2.9 billion birds have gone since 1970. Bird population studies through Breeding Bird Atlas, Christmas bird counts, and other means show that data. So what can you do to help songbirds? First, learn to live with caterpillar damage on your plants. Use no pesticides. And second, reduce your lawn and change the palette of plants in your yard to plants that foster caterpillars, the native plants of your area.
So actually, before we continue, there's a question from Mac user that was wondering if you know a good book on moth caterpillars. Moth caterpillars.
I have a book on caterpillars in the United States, and I will email that to Mac user. Okay.
Thank you.
So let me introduce Dr. Doug Tallamy, an entomologist from University of Delaware, which is in the outskirts of Philadelphia. And his first book, Bringing Nature Home, from 2007, has been a bestseller. And in this book, he promotes this idea of the plants for the caterpillars, for the birds. And his new book, Nature's Best Hope, just came out in this February. And there he talks about, we've really got to do something quickly. And what we need to do is make our native plant landscapes and make them enough, get our neighbors to do it, such that we have a homegrown national park. His concern about that is because only 5% of the United States land is in preserves, which is not enough to preserve diversity. 41% is agriculture, but agriculture, monoculture crops, not suitable to support these birds. And the other 54% is urban and suburban, mostly lawns. in the suburban. So that's what we have to work on and try to increase the habitat for birds. And he has evidence that planting native plants helps birds. He had a grad student, Desiree Narango, who studied the chickadees. She monitored reproduction and survival of Carolina chickadees within residential yards and found them when non-native plants increased in the yards, both insect availability and chickadee population growth declined. And populations could only be sustained if non-native plants constituted less than 30% of plant biomass. Write in the chat, does anybody have chickadees in their yard? You do, Sam? Good. Well, we have chickadees in our yard, and I'm proud of it. It means that we have less than 30% non-native. Somebody else?
I have everything else but.
Uh-huh. Yes, well, now you know how to work to get them.
Yeah.
Just take out a few non-natives and put more natives. And this caterpillar connection is how it works. And you can just Google the Carolina chickadee story. So to learn about your local native plants, the group is the Florida Native Plant Society. I've been a member since the late 80s. There are 2 chapters locally. The Tarflower chapter is the big chapter in Orlando. And then in Seminole County, we have the Couplet Fern chapter. The National Audubon Society has a Plants for Bird effort. And this part of their website actually has, you can put in your zip code and actually get a list of plants. And it's pretty good. And Orange Audubon is committed to this Plants for Bird effort. We have articles a couple times a year, and we have at least 1 talk a year on native planting for wildlife. And so you join with us and watch some of the educational things we do. We haven't done this in a while, but we had a yards tour and it was quite popular. This is my yard. I'm lucky enough to have a big one, but you don't have to have a big yard to provide habitat for birds. And I just want to show you, way back in 2004, when we first moved in, we had the typical foundation plants around the house, and we took those out because they're not they're not food for caterpillars at all. They're the shiny, waxy leaved plants like the camellias and the pittosporums and the viburnums. They are selected to not have insects eating them, but we want insects eating them, you see. A different concept. So in Bringing Nature Home, Doug Tallamy has one page that has a list of the different plant groups and how many species of caterpillars are on them. Oaks are the top with 534 species, and willows 456, cherries with 456, and birch. And some of these, because he's northern, we don't have them here. And so this list doesn't help us that much, but other than those top 3, we can work on. And I want to introduce Mary Keim and Randy Snyder, local bird experts, bird and just general all-around naturalists. And they have a great yard for Plants for Birds. And they don't feed birds at all. They don't put out bird seed, but they have all the plants and they have great birds. Like, I'm very impressed. This is a Nashville warbler, not an easy bird to get. And they have a video that Mary made, which you can find on YouTube by looking for Randy-Snyder-Mary-Keim. Those of you who are local, you know their names, and you can find that. I'll probably provide a link to that at some point. And Mary did this flyer for Orange Audubon of the top plants locally to plant and why for each one. So here she has the trees: black cherry, cabbage palm, eastern red cedar, live oak, longleaf pine, red maple, sugarberry or hackberry, winged elm, and a whole bunch of others, shrubs and vines and all. So we have that flyer available at all our events. Okay, so I'm going to go through just a few slides of these top groups of plants. The oaks, 534 species of caterpillars throughout the United States. And it's the new leaves that they particularly like. Like, for instance, we're looking up, and we're probably looking up at oak trees. That's where the warblers are. The willows, you all know that that's where you look for the yellow warblers. And throughout the United States, which is the distribution of the yellow warbler, they are on willows. You can find them on willows. They're eating the bugs and they're eating the catkins. So that's kind of a nice association. You can't put willows in your yard most places, but it's nice to know. And wild cherries, they both have the little cherry, which is just the right size for small birds, and lots of different insects, 456 species in the United States on their leaves. Now, something interesting is that cherries get the eastern tent caterpillar nests, which are quite unsightly. And a lot of people don't want that. But guess what? A very sought after bird is a specialist for that. This strong bill of the yellow-billed cuckoo can get through that tent, and they're specialists in that. Now, the sugar hackberry, those of you who go to the Lake Apopka Wildlife Drive know that the best warbler searching is right at the beginning, right past the ambassador kiosk, ambassador shelter, in those trees there, which have decreased a bit, but that's those are the sugar hackberries. Sugarberry or hackberry, and I've seen it written sugar hackberry, so I like to say it that way. Lots of different species of caterpillars. I planted them in my yard and noticed that that's a good place for warblers. They're gleaning is the term, with those beaks for the little caterpillars that roll the leaves or somehow are eating the new leaves. And it happens that that's a beautiful butterfly breeds on that too, the hackberry emperor. And another important tree to get in your yard is the sable or cabbage palm, our state tree. And the thing about it is the ratty looking undersides of the leaf are done by the palm leaf skeletonizer. That stuff is called frass, and it's the excrement of an insect. And this particular skeletonizer is a specialty of the yellow-throated warbler. See that little moth? That's all it is, just a little moth like that. The sable cabbage palm also has fruit that's of a perfect size for birds and sweet, actually. The robins can flock around and get that. And I'm nearing the end here, but butterfly caterpillars are not optimal for birds. All those bumps and things, those can exude distasteful substances. The color warns the birds that this is not good, and plus the size is not right for the warblers. Maybe a blue jay might go for one of these. So again, what are the best trees for caterpillars in Central Florida? The oaks, the cherries, sugar hackberry, and that's a very fast growing one that you can plant right away, and the sable palm, just a few of the top ones. Where to buy native plants? Not here at this fruit stand. I mean, these are nice plants, but these are probably plants that are so easy to propagate because they are invasive. They will go invasive in your yard. Plus they have the leathery, waxy leaves. They're not suitable for the caterpillars. And the caterpillars are specialists, so they wouldn't be on these plants. So they're not adding any value to your yard other than aesthetic. Where to buy the native plants? It's a specialized market. I might not have all the nurseries down, but these are the two big ones. Green Images out in Christmas, and this is one back from the 80s. It was the original one. And the owner is a landscape architect who I've had the pleasure of working with on projects. And David Driley is extremely knowledgeable. Everything I know about laying out my landscape and which plants will work, I really learned from him. So I still plug that nursery, even though he took a real hit in 2008 with the recession, and you will find a lot of weeds in the pots, but those are native weeds. So you can find like 3 plants at once when you go there and look for treasures. And his specialty is the palmettos, the silver palmettos. And then Green Isle Gardens is a very well-run nursery out, but you have to go all the way out to Groveland. But it has a great selection of plants. And to find a specific plant or to find nurseries, you go to the FAN, Florida Association of Native Nurseries. They've got a nice website. And coming up soon is Backyard Biodiversity Day, an event from the Tarflower chapter of the Florida Native Plant Society that Orange Audubon co-sponsors. And they'll have lots of plants for sale, the suitable ones for us. And the volunteers are native plant aficionados and very knowledgeable. So this is an excellent time to go buy some native plants. And Orange Audubon will be there with a booth. And if anybody feels like helping us, you can email. This is our first venturing out, but I guess we're going to do it with social distancing and masks and everything. And then this is my final slide. That Doug Tallamy, who I've described as a great guru of all this, caterpillars for birds, will be talking September 22nd on a Zoom program with Audubon Florida. And it's free, and you can find that by going to Audubon Florida's Facebook page. And then Orange Audubon will have Doug Tallamy coming for us, a program tapered. We're calling it Our Homegrown National Park, to try to make that point that we have to not only plant natives ourselves, but we have to educate on it and get our neighbors to do it. So we have an expanse of native habitat, and that'll be February 18th. So any questions?
That was great. Wonderful.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
When is the Biodiversity Day? Is October 17th? Was that at Mead?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes.
I missed where it was. I think I just misheard. So.
I probably didn't say. It's at Mead Botanic Garden.
Okay, great.
And there'll be walks in the morning, so you can just stay, check out the plants after the walk. Any other questions on plants for birds and the caterpillar connection?
I thought it was really interesting that the butterfly caterpillars the birds don't care about those.
Yes.
That was very interesting, because a lot of people, I mean, I have, the plants for the butterflies, but I never thought about it.
They're called Microlepidoptera, these little ones that they roll the leaves, they try to hide in the leaves. But especially in the early spring on the oaks, you'll start to notice them. Sometimes they come down on a thread, This is
Well, when I first got my Shumard oak, I had thousands of caterpillars almost destroyed it. They descended on it, and then they ate all the leaves. It took several days for the birds to find the caterpillars, and by that time, the poor tree was really devastated. And the city said, well, if that happens again, it'll probably kill the tree.
Well, the Shumard oak is farther north. I really don't get it why they keep promoting giving away or selling this Shumard oak. Did you get it at a?
No, the city planted it on the easement. I didn't want it. I wanted a live oak, and they said, well, we want diversity. So if you'll take the Shumard, and I said, well, I really don't want it. And then they wouldn't give me the live oaks. Anyway, that's what I got. But the caterpillars almost ate the whole thing one day. The first year I had it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Anything else? So oaks, cherries, hackberry, sugarberry, table palm. Those are the top 4. And those of you who are around locally, you'll have to pick up that flyer that Mary developed, and we'll all have more appreciation for it.
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best trees at Mead is the mulberry tree.
Oh,
Obviously.
yes. Okay. So all this discussion was not even touching on berried fruits. Okay. Yeah, that's a whole nother subject.
Well, and I was going to ask, do the caterpillars use the mulberry tree as well? Is it like a double whammy for the berries and the caterpillars?
You know, the mulberry is fuzzy.
Right.
The leaves are fuzzy, and that's a protection from the caterpillars. So I don't think Tallamy had it listed. I can go back a few slides and try to see his list and see if he got it on there. No. So that's just fruit, I guess. Yeah, well, I know we all want that in our yard. And there is a native mulberry, the red mulberry. It's not as prolific on fruit as the black mulberry that you have at Mead. It also is what they call dioecious, which means male plants and female plants. So you got to be sure when you buy it that it already has fruit and get the female plant.
Uh-oh. I just bought one last year. I hope it's a good one.
Anybody else have any questions? Of course, the beautyberry is great, and I could go on about the different berried plants.
Beautyberry is a native plant, though?
Oh, yes.
I had
Yes.
no idea.
Well, so does the beautyberry get caterpillars?
It also has fuzzy leaves. So we'll have to look more individually, but
I mean, I have one, but I've never seen caterpillars on it. The birds come for the berries, but I've never noticed any caterpillars.
right. So we got these two different categories of, and everybody understands about the berries.
Yeah.
And Bob has a point that he was saying that during early migration, fruit is important because sometimes before the caterpillars are readily available. So.
Yes, that's true. And there's one species famous for that, the yellow-rumped warbler. It has the digestive enzymes to digest the berries of wax myrtle, which have wax, which is tricky to digest. And so it can live farther north, the farthest north of the winter, the farthest north, because it's eating those berries. Yeah, that's another story.
Do we know if birds, excuse me, eat coffee? Because I bought some of those wild coffees.
Yeah, they do. And that'll be in your yard after 10 years or so, you'll start getting them all over.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Your yard is beautiful.
Thank you.
It is.
Yeah, it had a good foundation, and then I've been working on it hard. But this thing about the new leaves, and these birds are going north, they're just passing through because there's these enormous forests of the east that they are able to, live in. It has habitat for their nests and to feed their young caterpillars. Any more questions?
That looked like a fuzzy leaf.
Which one?
You passed it by already. So what do we think about that one? What do we think about cherry laurel?
Oh, okay. Cherry laurel has great seeds for birds. You'll get robins coming, visiting to it, cedar waxwings. But it's not as good as its sister species, the wild cherry or black cherry.
Black cherry.
For the caterpillars.
And the black cherry, does it do the same thing as cherry laurel with the little shoots everywhere? I mean, it's like a forest in 3 weeks.
It does not.
It does not.
So I would not recommend a cherry laurel to anyone.
And so if you have cherry laurel, swap it.
It's invasive, isn't it?
It's a native that's aggressive and basically invasive in that sense.
Yeah, I have it all over.
Yeah, it's crazy to maintain.
Yeah.
Keep it at bay.
Yeah. But the black cherry then is the one you want to get.
Uh-huh. You know any, well, I can look it up.
The name Prunus serotina. All right, well, I'll let everybody go. I know we have a lot of Zoom meetings multiple nights, and it's been really nice having you with us. Nobody has any more questions?
It was
Thank
nice.
you.
Wait, there's one more question.
Oh,
Gina wants to know if you give tours, Deborah.
Of my yard? Oh,
Yes.